When the young contestant from the crowded streets of Tondo, Manila walked onto the stage, the room felt a quiet wave of uncertainty. His clothes were simple, slightly faded, and clearly showed signs of a life lived without luxury. His shoes were worn, the kind that had carried him through muddy alleys, narrow pathways, and long commutes from a small rented room he shared with his family. Nothing about him suggested fame, glamour, or polished performance training. Instead, he stood there with a kind of raw, unfiltered truth, someone who came from struggle, someone whose dreams were bigger than his circumstances. Even the stage lights seemed too bright for him, almost overwhelming as he blinked against their glare. The judges exchanged quick glances, and among them, Cemon Cow Well looked the most doubtful. He leaned back, arms crossed, eyebrows slightly raised with that familiar expression that said, "Impress me, if you can." The boy took a deep breath, gripping the microphone with both hands as if it were the only solid thing in his life. A hush fell over the audience. You could feel the tension, an unspoken expectation that this would be just another performance, perhaps decent, perhaps ordinary, nothing that would shake the walls of the auditorium. But then, in the very next second, everything changed. The moment he opened his mouth and released that first powerful note, a shockwave passed through the room. His voice didn't simply sound good, it sounded legendary. It carried the unmistakable depth, grit, and golden warmth of Elvis Presley, but fused with something uniquely Filipino, heart, soul, and a kind of emotional electricity that cannot be taught. People in the front row gasped. Some sat up straighter. A few even whispered to their neighbors in disbelief. Cemon Cow Well, who had looked bored only seconds earlier, suddenly jolted forward like he had been hit with a sonic blast. His eyes widened, his jaw loosened, and the expression on his face transformed into pure shock. It was the kind of reaction that happens once in a blue moon, when talent is so real, so unexpected, so undeniably powerful that even the most critical judge has no choice but to surrender to it. As the young singer continued, the richness of his voice wrapped around the room like a warm tide. The high notes soared with precision. The low tones vibrated with power. Every word carried emotion, pain, pride, passion, hope, all woven together by a voice shaped by life's hardships. The audience could feel every ounce of struggle from the slums of Tondo, every moment he practiced alone in cramped spaces, every dream that kept him moving forward even when everything around him seemed to say, "Stop." His performance wasn't just singing, it was storytelling. It was survival turned into sound. By the time he reached the crescendo, the crowd was already on its feet. Goosebumps rippled across the room. Cheers erupted. People clapped, shouted, and held their heads like they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. And in the center of all that shock and celebration was Cemon Cow Well, eyes wide, mouth open, stunned in a way that said one clear thing: this poor boy from Tondo just made history. As the young singer from Tondo continued to deliver his electrifying Elvis-style performance, the judges' booth slowly transformed from skepticism into pure awe. By the time he hit the first chorus, every judge was already leaning forward, but no one reacted as intensely as Cemon Cow Well. His eyebrows shot up, his eyes locked onto the contestant as if he were witnessing something that defied logic. It wasn't just surprise, it was shock mixed with admiration, the rare kind he only shows when a performer shatters expectations. The camera zoomed in on Cemon Cow Well's face, capturing the exact moment disbelief turned into excitement, and this reaction would later explode across social media. What stunned him most wasn't just the voice, it was the contrast between the boy's poverty-stricken appearance and the world-class power coming out of him. For the audience watching at home from Quezon City, Davao City, Cagayan de Oro, and every corner of the Philippines, the performance felt deeply personal. It wasn't just a boy singing Elvis, it was a symbol of every Filipino kid who grew up with limited resources but carried unlimited dreams. People commented online that they felt tears forming the moment his voice hit those classic Elvis tones, because it was the kind of sound you'd expect from someone trained in expensive studios, not someone who learned to sing by echoing his voice through alleyways and small neighborhood karaoke spots. Cemon Cow Well kept shaking his head, smiling uncontrollably as the song progressed. Each note seemed to hammer deeper into his disbelief. At one point, he even whispered something to the judge beside him, almost as if he needed confirmation that what he was hearing was real. The boy's voice held a raw, soulful strength that cut through the room, and every lyric echoed with authenticity, like he wasn't just performing a song, but living it. The judges weren't just impressed, they were emotionally struck. The camera caught several audience members wiping away tears, overwhelmed by the fusion of Elvis's timeless style and the young Filipino's genuine heart. What made this moment even more powerful was how the contestant maintained his composure despite everything he had gone through in life. Coming from a place where opportunities are scarce, he carried himself with humility rather than fear. His eyes shined with determination, and you could tell he wasn't singing for fame, he was singing because music was the one thing that kept his spirit alive. As the chorus flowed into the next verse, the entire room realized that they weren't witnessing a simple audition. They were witnessing a breakout star, someone who had stepped out from the shadows of hardship and into the spotlight with a voice that demanded to be heard. When the final note echoed through the auditorium, the entire place erupted into a roaring wave of applause and cheers. People jumped to their feet as if they had just witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. The judges stood too, but none stood out more than Cemon Cow Well, who rose slowly, still visibly stunned, his expression frozen somewhere between disbelief and admiration. His jaw was slightly open, his eyes still wide, and for a few seconds, he didn't even clap, he was simply processing what had just happened. When he finally brought his hands together, the sound of his applause carried a weight that every viewer could feel. It wasn't polite approval, it was genuine, undeniable respect. A standing reaction from Cemon Cow Well is rare, almost legendary, and the boy from Tondo, Manila had earned it without question. The crowd's energy was electric, and soon enough, the moment spread far beyond the auditorium. Clips of the performance began exploding across social media platforms. Fans from Cebu City, Bacolod City, Iloilo City, Zamboanga City, and even overseas Filipinos in the USA, Middle East, and Europe were sharing the video within minutes. Many wrote emotional comments about how the contestant's voice reminded them of home, of family karaoke nights, of the Filipino spirit that thrives even through hardship. Others pointed out how inspiring it was to see someone from a poor background rise to such a powerful stage, proving that talent doesn't depend on wealth, privilege, or perfect circumstances. The boy from Tondo, who once sang in narrow streets and borrowed microphones from neighbors, was now the face of a viral global moment. Backstage interviews and audience reactions quickly added fuel to the fire. People couldn't stop talking about the intensity and authenticity of the performance. Fans praised how he combined the nostalgic soul of Elvis Presley with the emotional depth of a Filipino heart. Meanwhile, many were replaying Cemon Cow Well's priceless reaction, calling it one of the best judge moments ever captured. Memes, fan edits, and short reels showcasing his shocked expression flooded feeds everywhere. The performance wasn't just a musical act, it became a cultural flashpoint, a moment that brought pride to millions and reminded the world of how powerful Filipino talent can be. For the contestant himself, this moment was more than applause or online fame, it was the breakthrough he had dreamed of since childhood. You could see tears forming in his eyes as he looked out at the cheering crowd, overwhelmed by the realization that the world had finally heard his voice. From surviving the hardships of Tondo to standing on an international stage receiving a standing reaction from Cemon Cow Well, he had rewritten his own story. His journey proved that greatness can rise from the most unlikely places, and with one unforgettable performance, he didn't just stun the judges, he inspired an entire nation.